Hello and welcome to the Becoming Your Highest Self podcast. I'm your host, Macy Renee, and we are going on a journey together, my friend. If you've been looking for a podcast geared towards your growth, self-awareness, navigating your brain's daily mind drama, and deep inner work to become your highest and best self, you are in the perfect place. Let's get started. Hello and welcome back to Becoming Your Highest Self podcast. I hope that you all had an amazing weekend. I appreciate all of the love and feedback that you all have given me by shouting me out on Facebook or Instagram, letting me know that you are loving the episodes. I got so much feedback about the money episode. A lot of feedback about how people have just been listening to several episodes, binging really, and they've been loving the content because it's giving them a new outlook on life, and that's exactly the goal of this podcast. This podcast is about becoming your highest self, and that means becoming the absolute best version that you can dream up. It is you without limits. It is you being the person you dream of, having the things you dream of, having no limits whatsoever as to what you can do. And the only thing that creates a limit for us is our belief system, our mindset, the things that we hold on to without questioning if it's actually true. So we often have these beliefs and thoughts about what life can be about, and we don't push those limits because most people in life and around us aren't pushing limits. And because of that, we often don't reach the potential that we actually have. We just don't push ourselves because the brain is always trying to protect us. A few weeks ago, maybe even just a week ago, I posed the question, what do you guys want to hear about on the podcast? And I got some really good suggestions. And one of the things that someone asked me was about how to tackle the topic of resistance, how to handle resistance when it comes up. What does resistance mean? So I thought that that would be a perfect topic to discuss today. So that's what we're going to dive into, shall we? Resistance. What is that? What is resistance? So resistance, especially in terms of life and changing your life, and something that you'll hear a lot of life coaches say is, well, where is that resistance coming from? And what we mean by that is, obviously, if you know the definition of resistance, this isn't too hard to figure out, but going even deeper, it means why is there, what's the best way to describe this just to make it easy on everybody? Why are you holding yourself back in that area? Or why do you refuse to look at that? Or why is it so difficult for you to move forward and do XYZ? So that's kind of what we mean when we say, where's the resistance, or what is the resistance that you're experiencing? So I've experienced this a lot of times, and I definitely can give you the most clear examples probably in terms of money, which we just talked about last week. That was the longest episode I have ever recorded. I did not realize there was so much to say about money, or that I had so much to say about money, or that I had learned that much about money, but I've also invested nearly $7,000 in just the last 6 months to learn money. And so I think that my brain was like overloaded with all of this information, and because I'm so intrigued by the thought process and the energetics around money, it was just like I could not shut up on that podcast. So I'm glad that you all enjoyed it, and I had a lot of people say that I blew their mind. I've had clients I've been talking to about money, and they're like, you have to do a course. Most people need to know this information. And one of my clients that I work with one-on-one, I have been basically sharing with her everything that I've learned about money, and she's been incorporating the principles, and it's so crazy. She keeps sending me text messages about more money coming into her life, so much so that her husband is like, okay, maybe you're not crazy. She's like, I told you. So I'm like, keep practicing, keep doing it, keep doing it. You are the example. You're doing it. It's so exciting. But anyways, resistance, I can give a lot of examples about that. So anytime it comes time for me to make a big investment in a coach, I experience resistance. And what I mean by that is I experience this level of fear that makes me want to stay right where I'm at, stay in a comfortable place. And so that's another thing that I mean whenever I'm asking clients, like, what is the resistance that you're feeling? Where is this resistance showing up in your life? For me, resistance really does show up in terms of money. So if a coach has a program that I really want to do, and this happened for me with money, right? Think about like how crazy this is. I already have issues with money beliefs, and then I have to spend the money to learn from the coach. So there was a lot of resistance for me. So the first money program that I invested in was $2,555. So much resistance. I mean, that's a lot of money for the average person. The average person would look at that, I think, and be like, what value am I going to get out of this? Am I going to get value out of this? Are they going to teach me things I already know, or am I going to learn new things? Is it going to be life changing? Is it blah, 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 blah? Like your brain just starts racing. And so in that moment, I experienced resistance in making that investment in myself. Did I end up making it? Of course. Did I learn a lot? Absolutely. It changed my life. And then shortly after that, I invested another $2,100 in a different coaching program that I have lifelong access to. And that one has changed my life as well. I still have modules that I need to complete. But each time there has been incredible resistance, like wanting to run away, screaming, wanting to crawl into a ball and hide, wanting to talk myself out of it, try to justify why the heck I would ever spend that amount of money, wishing that it was cheaper and that it would all go away. And all of it comes down to fear. That's ultimately what resistance comes down to, is just being fearful of the outcome and what is going to happen. So for me, that fear a lot of times comes in place of, making an investment into myself, making an investment that's going to help me grow my business. And I have the logic and understanding that every time I've made an investment, I get the money back plus 10 times more. So it's always worth it. But that doesn't keep my brain from having resistance and telling me that doing it is going to, make everything fall apart, or making that investment is going to mean that I'm not going to be able to afford something else, or something bad's going to happen. It's like resistance is when your brain kicks in gear and tells you all the reasons why you shouldn't do something, or you shouldn't go for the goal. That's the reason you shouldn't speak up in a scary situation. That's the reason we aren't going to say yes to that public speaking event and put ourselves out there. That's the reason we're not going to make the Facebook post and be vulnerable. It's that resistance in our mind that wants to keep us safe. And it just comes down to the brain saying, you're going to die if you do this. You're going to be embarrassed if you do this. It tells us all the reasons why what we're wanting to do is going to go wrong. And that is why we're feeling that feeling of, oh my gosh, can I do this? Should I do this? And we get into our mind, and it's a terrible feeling. Because we often know that if we do the thing, we're going to grow on the other side, and yet our brain will just completely sabotage us into the point where we end up making the same decision we've always made and playing really safe. So resistance shows up in, several different ways. It can show up and maybe you need to speak with a family member about something that is really important to you, and you keep backing out of it, or you keep saying, I'll do it next week, I'll do it next week, I'll do it next week. That's resistance. Let's see, what are some other examples that I can give you about resistance? Growth in general is so hard for people. I have heard from relatives or spouses of some of my clients that they don't want their significant other to keep putting the money in themselves to invest because they start feeling that energetic shift we talked about a few episodes back about how energetically a lot of times we can feel when relationships are changing, and when we're ready to step into our highest self, it means we have to operate at a different level, which also changes the energetic frequency that we play on. And when other people can feel that, sometimes it shifts the way that we have interacted in certain relationships. So sometimes there's even resistance for other people to grow, or for ourselves. Like sometimes we're afraid of changing ourselves because we're afraid of what we might lose along the way. And I see this come up a lot, like wanting to have it all and be it all and do it all, and wanting to live this very lavish life that is completely 100% possible, but being so afraid and having so much resistance to stepping into that person, because it may mean that some of those current close relationships that you have right now are going to shift and change a little bit. And the brain is always looking for what's going to be most painful, and then it does the opposite one. So if you have two choices, like step into who you're meant to be, become your highest self, be limitless. Let's say you could make all the money you ever wanted to make, but that would mean that you maybe had to do some public speaking, and you had to make several $1,000 investments, and there were some tough decisions that you would have to make. You'd have to grow, and maybe you would hire a coach and they would push you consistently out of your comfort zone. So we know that the brain would say that feels scary. All of those things sound really scary. And then on the opposite side, you have the option of staying the same, and maybe you're struggling with money. Maybe things aren't always working out for you, and you're miserable at your job, and you don't want to do that job forever, and you don't see the way out, and that's really miserable as well. And so you're looking at your options, and you've got option A: jump out of my comfort zone, spend thousands of dollars investing in myself, hire a coach that's going to push me out of my comfort zone. Maybe have to do some public speaking, which I, absolutely hate, yada, yada, yada. Or option B: stay exactly as I am, who I am today, not really be madly in love with my life, but it's tolerable. But I want to change, and, keep all my same relationships and feel miserable at times and not know how to change it. And what the brain will do is say, which one's most uncomfortable? For most people in the world, option A is going to be most uncomfortable. And so as a result, even though they're not exactly happy with option B, they will choose option B because their brain tells them that's the safest, that's what's predictable, that's what's going to be most comfortable for them. So is it uncomfortable? Yes. They don't love it. They don't absolutely love it, but it's more comfortable than doing the latter. And that really keeps a lot of people in the same place for a long time. Something I used to say to many of my clients was, when they're having to choose between what's most uncomfortable, I would give this example, and I made it up in my mind, and it's probably crazy to even say it out loud, but I'm a very visual person, so I love visual examples. And the way that I think of this is, let's say you get on an airplane, and every single seat in the airplane has thumbtacks or push pins, whichever one you can see in your mind. So you just close your eyes, and I want you to imagine you're in the air on an airplane. You have a 5-hour flight, and you're sitting on these push pins or thumbtacks, whatever it is that you can imagine. Is sitting on the thumbtacks or push pins uncomfortable? Absolutely yes. It is very uncomfortable to be sitting on that airplane seat with thumbtacks sticking in the butt, like they're poking you in the rear, and it's not comfortable. But that is option A. You have to sit the entire 5-hour flight on the thumbtacks. Option B is that you use the parachute and you jump out of the plane. And there's no guarantee, right, of whether or not you're going to land and be completely safe. So you might land in the wrong spot. You might break a bone trying to land. whatever it is. And so what I have my clients do is just close your eyes and imagine this. Option A, you sit on the thumbtacks or push pins uncomfortably for 5 hours, or you use the parachute and you jump out of the plane. Your brain is going to choose what is more uncomfortable. And for most people in the world, jumping out of the airplane is going to be most uncomfortable. So option A is not really something that they love. They'd rather not be sitting on push pins and being poked in the rear. They'd rather not do that, but it's more comfortable knowing that they're going to land safely in the plane, even though it's a little bit painful. And then you have a few people in the world, right, compared to the people wanting to sit on thumbtacks. You have the other people in the world that would much rather not be uncomfortable for those 5 hours and just jump out of the plane and see what happens on the way down. And this is what we do, right? A lot of those people on the airplane would have resistance to jump. They would be like, absolutely not. What if my parachute doesn't open? What if I, fly off somewhere and I don't know where I am? What if I break a bone on the way down? What if I land in the water instead of on land? What if I, their brain will just totally sabotage them to the point of, I would rather just be uncomfortable and sit on this tack knowing that I'm going to land to my destination. It's predictable. It's what's comfortable. It's what most people choose to do. And so I see this a lot, and I can even, you guys, I want to let you know that I can recognize this in my own life, because I definitely would say that I have come out of my comfort zone over the years. I am doing things in my life that I never ever thought I would be doing, this podcast included. I remember whenever I would see people I look up to say that they were going to release a podcast and thinking that is amazing for them. I could never imagine having that. I could just never imagine being the woman that does that. I would love to be the woman that does that, but I can't imagine ever being the woman that does that. What equipment would I need? What host sites would I use? How hard would it be? Would I be able to edit it on my own? Would I have a good podcast voice? Would people even listen? Would blah, 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 blah. I mean, my brain would take me out of the game before I even got there. And that's what our brain does a lot of the time. It's like, if I'm using that airplane example and it's jump out of the plane and have a podcast and see what happens, and this could be really successful and you could have a lot of listeners, but you never know. You got to jump out of the plane to find out. I was sitting on the thumbtacks. I'm like, absolutely not. I mean, there was so much resistance to doing the podcast for the longest time. It was like, no, I'd rather sit on the thumbtacks, until sitting on the thumbtacks becomes more uncomfortable than jumping out of the plane. This is just giving you a visualization. So eventually it just became more uncomfortable for me to always wonder what if. And when I get to that point when it's more uncomfortable for me to think what if, then usually I'll do the scary thing. So same thing with these, financial investments that have scared me to death, and hiring a coach. My brain goes down the path of, what if I can't make the payment? What if I fall behind on other payments and bills? What if I don't get out of the program what I expected? What if I have to take full ownership and responsibility for my results, which you do. That's a part of it. When you hire a coach, you don't get to blame them for everything. Like, part of coaching is learning you're responsible for everything, and you're responsible for how you show up and what you get out of it. And that can be difficult too, because our brain wants to blame whenever things don't turn out the way that we wanted them to turn out. And so, in the past, I can see all of the times where sitting on that thumbtack was way more comfortable, even though it was very uncomfortable. It was like, I'd rather not make the financial investment. I'll just sit here on these thumbtacks and freak out about all the reasons everything would go wrong, until the day where I could draw my line in the sand and say, you know what, I'm done with that. That's annoying to me. I'm at a place now where I'm miserable with where my life is at. I need the help. That person can help me. I've been stalking them forever. I trust that they know how to help me. Do I want to pay the money? No, there's resistance to paying that money, but who will I be on the other side? And that's when you also have to really activate and call in your highest self, because becoming your highest self means that you are operating as that person that can do it way before you're ready. So what I would have to do is ask myself, what would Macy do if she knew that making that investment would make her successful? She would just do it. So current Macy would sit on the thumbtacks, but highest self Macy would know you need to jump out of the effing plane. And so I sink into my body and I sink into the Macy that I know I'm capable of being. And I've launched the podcast. I launched my life coaching business. I've done things that I never thought possible. I've tapped into the person I know that I can be way before I'm ready. And that means metaphorically jumping out of the airplane before I'm ready and choosing my discomfort. Is it more uncomfortable for me to sit on the thumbtacks, or is it more uncomfortable for me to jump out of the plane? More than not, it's more uncomfortable to jump out of the plane. However, I'm at a point in my life where mediocrity, I don't know how to pronounce that, so please don't make fun of me, is more uncomfortable for me at times than doing the hard, scary thing, because I do feel a burning sensation in my soul that I am capable of a lot more than sometimes I push myself to be. And I really want to meet and know my highest self before my time is up on earth, and nobody can predict when that will be. Only God has that decided. And so for me, it's very important that while I'm here, while I have the privilege of being here, that I'm living out who I'm meant to be. And I really believe that that is to guide and coach women through really difficult things, and to not let their trauma, their fear, their hardship hold them back from becoming their highest self. And it also means that I have to go first. So I can't just coach and mentor people from sitting on the thumbtacks and the push pins on the plane and say, this is how you do life. I'm going to give you all the examples, and I'm just going to sit here on these push pins as I tell you everything you need to do. I mean, that's totally out of integrity. That doesn't work. We know that doesn't work. I've had to jump out of the plane multiple times, and because I've jumped out of the plane and survived stuff that I thought was going to be terrifying and scary, I'm able to come to this podcast and teach you guys really valuable information about, how you can grow and step into your highest self. So when you feel the resistance, you really just need to check in with yourself and ask yourself, am I going to die? Have you ever seen the memes where it's like, but did you die? That is so true. Most of the time we don't, but our brain tells us that we are, or that we're going to. We talk ourselves out of it. So if you're feeling resistance to anything, maybe you're wanting to make an investment into something that is going to help you grow. Maybe you're wanting to hire a coach. Maybe you're wanting to get back into college and do something that scares you. Maybe you want to have a very hard conversation with a really good friend or a family member, and it's scaring the bejesus out of you. Maybe you want to travel far and you've never traveled alone on an airplane, and you're terrified. Whatever it is that you want to do, when you feel resistance, you need to ask yourself, what is more uncomfortable? Do I feel the fear because my brain is telling me stay cozy and comfy where everything's predictable in this moment? Or do I choose to jump out of the plane and see what happens on the other side? Most of the most amazing things in life happen from jumping out of the plane. And you'll surprise yourself, because once you do it once, your brain will have the evidence that you didn't die and that it was an amazing thing that you did, and that if you did it once, you have evidence you can do it again. And with practice, it becomes easier and more smooth, and there will be less resistance the more that you do it. So how do you get over resistance? You build up the courage to do it once and teach your brain that everything's going to be okay, and that's what creates confidence in your life. So before you can feel confidence, you have to feel courage, and you have to be courageous and do the hard thing. And once you do that, and you're getting used to, putting yourself out there, then you will be confident and you can have it all. So I hope that this episode helped you, and I hope that you will fight through your resistance and know that you are more powerful than you think. I'll see you next week.